at one of our favorite places. See if we can break down this game. I'm not sure what's going to be said or what we're going to do, but it's going to be pretty interesting to say the least. Not really sure. The man of the hour is in here.
What's up?
Not the Buffalo Bills offense.
Yeah, no, that was terrible. That was terrible.
Oh my
hey, what's up, everybody?
goodness.
Yeah, just awful, right?
Yes.
So, first off, welcome to the first unofficial post game. So we're going to keep this pretty brief. Lots of things to talk about, but again, we'll catch up on a lot of this throughout the course of the week. We're just going to give you that initial reaction post game. So that's what we're doing here. So we got a couple cups of coffee. I got a blueberry bagel with some cream cheese for those of you keeping score at home.
I know the Bills aren't keeping score.
Yeah, no, that is a fact. That is a fact. It was awful. So Mark, looking at everything over the course of the whole game, right?
Yes.
Pretty simple to kind of put this in perspective. The Bills completed 11 passes. The Ravens scored 8 different times, right? Typically, you're not going to win many games when you attempted more punts, right? Than
nearly 400 yards of punts.
I know. He realized that we attempted 9 punts and completed 11 passes. Right? Like it's not a recipe for success, especially when you only target your best offensive weapon in LaShawn McCoy 10 times over the course of the entire game. He ran the ball. He threw 3 targets in the past game. I think 7 rush attempts. So simply just not enough. Obviously, he had some problems getting things going, but I mean, the reality is you're never going to win a football game like that.
No, it's actually pretty sad that. I know when we talked about it beforehand, we were talking about, okay, this and that, and I started breaking down the game, started doing this and that, and had my little notepad here because that's how I work, And
that's true.
It was hard to watch a team that you have such high hopes for get absolutely massacred. And the first thing that came to me as I was watching it, they were making Joe Flacco look unbelievable. Elite.
Yeah, elite.
And then we go past that, and I start thinking about myself. I'm going, Rodgers, Rivers, Stafford, Cousins, Brady.
You're never gonna make it past any of those quarterbacks, especially when you have the likes of Brown and Crabtree just completely lighting up the secondary. And what ended up happening was the Bills deactivated Vontae Davis, who was inactive for the game, and Phillip Gaines got the start. Right. We saw Teron Johnson on the field a lot. The truth of the matter was that the Bills' pass rush was able to generate some pressure, but just couldn't bring Flacco down. Like, Flacco looked like Big Ben back there, right? With the way he was able to step out. The truth is, well, I'm just saying, this is not a great receiver group, right? I mean, if you're looking at the scope of receivers that you're going to face in the NFL, this is not a group that you're ranking in the top 10.
Well, I wouldn't rank him in the top 10, but Snead has made some damage, albeit with Breeze.
Yeah.
Brown with Palmer. And Crabtree has with a couple other quarterbacks. He's been a solid route runner, but that is just what were we worried about coming into this game? The offensive line and the secondary, and what ended up happening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And unfortunately, over the scope of what we see as the entire season, we had all kind of been under the understanding that we were going to see Josh Allen brought along. I'm going to say slowly, right? We'd expect to see Josh Allen in at a little bit more of a ceremonious time, and he got a very unceremonious introduction into the NFL live game day action. And this is unfortunately, out of every game that Nate Peterman has started, right?
Yeah.
How many has he finished?
That's a great question.
Zero. He's never finished a game he started. He's like EJ Gaines. He just never finishes a game that he started. But that's the truth, right? And you can't just ignore what was happening. So what were the Ravens doing to this Bills offense that completely stymied them? I think it's important to talk about the offense because you only put up 3 points, right? Understand, we gave 40 plus, so there's a lot of things on the defense to cover. But what did you see out of the box that the Ravens were doing to the Bills that was able to stymie that offense?
I was terrified, and the thing about it was, what I was so scared about what the Bills were doing, or ended up, the Ravens were going to do to the Bills. I knew they were going to do a lot of twists, stunts, blitz, weak side pressure and stuff like that because of the communication between Peterman and Groy. We thought was going to be a plus, was still kind of a minus.
Yeah.
Vlad Dukas, Dawkins. I mean, they're still a very young line as far as playing together. So you knew that was going to be a lot of trouble. The front four of Baltimore just absolutely abused them. But you know what? They abused teams last year too.
Yeah.
So it's not
really
like they were going against a team that was awful on the front.
Yeah, that's
true. You know, like Suggs and everybody. But I mean, just the fact that when they did the wide shot of some of the replays, and nobody's open.
No.
You can't put that 100% on Peterman. Peterman to say that he struggled would be an understatement. But if nobody's open, he's not going to put it in harm's way. A couple of times when they were open, though, he missed shots. I won't put that on him, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Dennis Chapman chimed in, so thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Of course, if you have anything to say, just let us know. We're sitting here at Tim Hortons in Buffalo.
That's how we
Cheers.
roll.
Unfortunately, there's not nearly enough brandy in this coffee to make this loss any better. It was a very sobering experience. So Dennis said it was painful. I think that's fair. I think that's
a collective.
I think that's very fair.
Bills
to say.
fans collectively will say that.
Yeah, it was painful. And one of the knocks against this Bills offensive group has been that wide receiver group, right?
Yes.
And you saw today that you know, there was a very, very large lack in separation, but I think Baltimore had it pretty easy because Peterman was stare down central all game. He knew exactly where he was going, and we talked about this. We did a pregame show with the boys out with Rock Sports with Ryan Lasel and Icy Vic.
Yes, we did.
And one of the things that would happen there, and we talked about, was the secondary. And the secondary is a very experienced secondary. You look up and down, and there's some really solid players in the secondary, and they're simply not going to miss the opportunity to take advantage of a quarterback that can't get off his first look, right? And that's what we saw the whole game. Peterman was just stare down central, and all it took was a little bit of a rush, and of course nobody was open. It was very obvious where Peterman was going with everything.
Yeah, because like you said, in the preseason, he went into his first read, it was open hitting. First read, open hitting. And if we turn gears, Nick Lettieri, I'm sorry if I mispronounced him, Nick. I really do apologize.
He's a math teacher, not a language arts.
I butcher names in class all the time, so I apologize. Edmonds was the only bright spot on the team. I will say he was flying around, and you know how they talk about guys. They say if you're going to make mistakes, make them at 100 miles an hour. He was.
Yeah.
He was making mistakes is the thing that I wanted to get through because, and I'm not knocking Edmonds, but there was a reason that Baltimore early was running a lot of play action. Not even running the ball maybe once or twice and then play action, throw backside because Edmonds, he is so aggressive and he flies to the ball and then passes across the middle getting completed by Flacco because he's not in that zone that he's supposed to be in. So they did their homework on Edmonds as far as you got a rookie middle linebacker. That's going to happen. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
But there's a reason why Baltimore was doing that early and often in this game.
I will say that Edmonds did do a good job when it came to communication with the rest of the defense. He seemed to be under control. He didn't seem to look overwhelmed.
Yes.
Right? But we've talked about it on this show before, is that Edmonds can get tricked by a little bit of misdirection, a little bit of motion one way can sometimes suck him into a zone that you don't want him to be in just yet. And we saw a lot of that. And that's kind of what we had anticipated was a misdirection and play action to try and get him out of the zones that he needs to stay home in. And hopefully we see that fewer and fewer, but we're going to see that early and often because teams know that that's an issue, right? So hopefully we're going to see that declining as Bills are able to stymie offenses on those first and second drives. Unfortunately, Baltimore really didn't have too much trouble getting it going early. And even though, they were able to suck Edmonds in, the fact of the matter is that there were 5 or 6 opportunities just off the top of my head that I can think that the Bills could have wrapped up Flacco in the backfield, and they just simply couldn't bring him down for whatever the reason was. Edmonds did look great. The one positive I drew out of it was the communication factor across the defense. I didn't see missed coverages necessarily. I didn't see miscommunicated coverages. But you did see some guys nowhere near receivers when you needed them. Like anytime you're inside the red zone and you have 2 passes to guys that there's no one within 5 yards of them, that's trouble.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a miscommunication issue. I don't know if it was the guys that it was funny because like during the broadcast and you know a couple of things that you know we were talking with people on social media and whatever, they were like, you know, they need to wake up. They came out flat. They came out like, okay, yeah, we're gonna run over Baltimore and everything, and it just didn't happen, and it was very. It was unbelievably disappointing.
So I just want to say some Bills fans are just great. We just got a picture sent to us in our Buffalo Bills fans only fan group.
Brutal.
It's pretty funny. Robert, you got me on that one. Normally I don't flinch and stuff like this. You got me on that one. So thank you.
That was good. Congratulations.
Yeah. Again, the brutal facts are that Buffalo was very quickly out of scope with what Baltimore was doing, and that's one of the things I was hoping to see is, you know, those first 10 to 15 plays, they're rehearsed. Like anytime you come out in a game, you don't get off script very early, right?
Yeah,
so those first 10 plays should be really well executed plays, and there was just nothing going on.
Well, you go down 14 quick. You got to kind of get off script. You kind of try to, you know, put your foot on the gas and try to make plays that open up a little bit of your offense. But it seemed like the script didn't work. The script on the defense didn't work. It was just like they weren't generating a consistent rush.
Right.
They weren't blitzing.
No,
not nearly as much as they should have.
No.
And when they did blitz, they blitzed on obvious downs like third.
Honestly, their best blitzer is probably Edmonds. If
Yeah,
you look
you
from the
want him to
linebacker
roam.
support, right? Yeah. So I don't think they're really at a position where they want him, you know, abandoning that middle just yet. We did get a question from Nick on zone coverages. Are we going to see? Yeah, thank you. Are we going to see them switch to more man coverages because zone obviously wasn't getting those assignments just weren't getting picked up. I think the downside with that is if you look at who we have running this team. We got guys that they love that zone coverage,
yes,
you know, and that's kind of the problem with you know Leslie Frazier to Sean McDermott. While they do come from different backgrounds in defense, there are very large similarities in crossover, and that's primarily in zone coverage. So I don't really see them switching to man in that respect.
I think if they can't generate the kind of pass rush that they want and get pressure by playing zone, just rushing four, they're going to have to do something, and that something is they're going to have to blitz more. They're going to have to bring a linebacker, maybe a safety off the corner,
and that drops them into man.
And when you do that, that
drops them into man coverage.
That makes them play a little bit more man. So unless they can generate more of a pass rush with the front four, you're going to see more man. You're going to see more aggressiveness. You're going to see more blitz. Or more guys blitz on that. I mean, maybe Milano off of one side, and you want to drop Gaines in the box, or Raphael Bush came in when you know, if you want to do that, that's fine. I mean, if you can't just, if one thing the Bills took out of today, especially the defense, is that you can't just line up and play guys, you know, man for man, or I mean, in the zone, just like that, because you're going to get burned, and you're going to get burned by, like you said, a receiving core that's not listed in the top 10.
No.
So if you end up playing a team in the top 10, how are you going to? Because majority of the day, Trey White was on Crabtree, and you expected that. You expected he was going to be the route runner. He was going to be the guy that was going to try to manipulate this and that and the other thing. So, like to Nick's point, yeah, I could see them blitzing a little bit more in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, you got to give that secondary a little bit of a break, right? Because it was just brutal. They were able to move the ball really at will. You know, it's whenever you see your backup quarterback getting garbage time in Lamar Jackson, that's always troubling. This does speak to the larger question, and the larger question to me is you went into this game with two quarterbacks, and the thought process that I think we're all under the understanding of was that quarterback number 2, you weren't going to play unless quarterback number 1 died. Like, he would have to be dead. I think we saw a quarterback die today because it was awful. What?
I'm done with this.
It wasn't good, right?
No.
But again, you saw a lot of things that normally you see with young collegiate quarterbacks in that stare down, and there were just things that we were able to accept in the preseason about Nate Peterman that were just quickly exploited by Baltimore. They clearly did their homework. They have a great coaching staff. I mean, that's just the truth. You know, last year was just a bad year for them. But the problem with Baltimore has often been they had no receiver help. And apparently they feel they found the answer to that. Dropping 40 plus on the Bills certainly supports that they found the answer, for the receiving group. But the question becomes, one, what do you do from here? And two, in hindsight, if McCarron was on this roster and the decision to start Peterman really was the decision the coaching staff had made, would you have put McCarron in before Allen? Because if you're keeping 3 quarterbacks, I think that's kind of what the thought process is okay, we're going to let Peterman start. If that falls apart, we'll let McCarron go. And the later in the season you go, the more likely it becomes that Josh Allen is the replacement quarterback, right? Yeah. So by moving off of McCarron and dealing him, do we have any seller's remorse here in this regard? What would you do for another quarterback right now on this roster? Do you think the Bills are going to add one? Do you think they need one? And if you're going into next week, what are you doing?
If the view of the Buffalo Bills was initially, because you remember when they 2 years ago when they made that trade with Kansas City, they were hoping to have 2 really high picks,
right?
And then they were going to end up trying to build this team slowly. McDermott's on a 5-year plan. You got to think they're going to do that. By making the playoffs, everyone kind of shifted. Everyone in the Buffalo landscape kind of shifted and said, "Listen, all right, this team's ready. We're going to make the next step next year." When that may have not been the process, in essence, they may have said, "Like, we're going to build this slowly. There's going to be a lot of turnover. We're going to bring guys in through draft picks, through free agency, sign 2-year deals." This offseason, they signed a lot of guys over 2-year deals because they wanted to try to save those draft picks and whatnot. So, a lot of that stuff's going on. If they had no intention of winning anything this year and to have another high draft pick, it could be a scenario where that's why you get rid of A.J. McCarron. Yeah. That's why you're going to start Josh Allen. However, the thing was, they wanted to protect Allen because you got to think, highest drafted quarterback ever in franchise history. This kid needs to mature as far as on the field goes. You don't want to destroy his confidence. You don't want to destroy the building blocks that are going to happen with this kid. So you get a college coach that can probably speak his language initially.
Right.
And then after that, you kind of move into, okay, what do we need around this kid to help him out? Because he's used to not having receivers at Wyoming. He's used to not having a line and running around, so that is familiar to him. Just trying to get him slowly acclimated to the NFL would probably be the way that they want to do it. But I think it all stems from, if they don't expect to go to the playoffs, or they don't expect to make a noise in the division this year, and they just want to have a high draft pick and collect guys and get guys here, then it makes sense just to have 2 quarterbacks. But if they're in a win-now mode and they have this kind of pressure on them, then they may bring a guy in. They may bring 1 or 2 guys in. You know what I mean? So
we've got some comments floating in from the YouTube page from those who are watching live. So again, thank you very much. Outside looking at a couple comments there, so I'm just going to kind of consolidate what your statements were. Sean McDermott, I think, does hold a bit of blame here because
he does.
Whenever you look at a situation in a quarterback competition like this, right? I think the truth is that when you have 3 horses in the race, none of them are going to truthfully be fully prepared for a season. Right, because you're splitting those first team reps across the board, so the chemistry with the first team wide receivers is not necessarily going to be
Some
there.
guys go into camp for 4.
Right.
Sometimes they want,
So and unfortunately, because they didn't whittle it down quicker, right? In that respect, Peterman got a little bit of preparation time, but a lot of quarterbacks get 4 weeks ramp time in order to build at least some sort of chemistry with any new players, not to mention the incumbents. Peterman should have had the leg up on that, but the truth is you get better the more first team reps you take. So the decision now for McDermott is, what are you going to do moving forward? Who do you want to develop with those first team reps starting right now? I think putting in Allen when you did is sort of the watermark of panic. Right? That's where you put the panic mode. Is you said, okay, well, I don't know anymore. Right? And unfortunately, I think that's where you start looking at, from a developmental standpoint, what are you going to do next? And you have to look at those reps with the ones as your best opportunity to develop a quarterback, not the in-game time. Right? Both these quarterbacks are still too green to really be able to learn a whole lot during game. It's about that practice time for them. So as far as who's going to start next week, I mean, the answer is really 50-50 at this point. If you go back to Peterman, if there's any chink in the armor, Allen goes in, and then the Peterman conversation has to come to an end. Because you've made the commitment, unless you're going to bring in another quarterback. But again, I don't see any value there if you're looking to develop Peterman and Peterman and Allen at the same time. But unfortunately, and you know this as a quarterback, you can't develop 2 starters at once.
No,
it's not possible.
If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I mean, that's the age-old saying. And I think the thing that goes along with McDermott, I mean, if you ever listen to McDermott's press conferences, I mean, I listened to it on the way here. He's not going to give you anything, so don't expect anything out of McDermott. I never expect anything out of McDermott. So the reason why he's saying he has to maybe watch the tape and see it and evaluate it is the fact that Peterman was playing against ones in their game plan, how they plan for how they plan for Peterman, how they plan for the Bills. Now you go into the second half. You know, Baltimore's got a sizable lead. They're not playing the same game plan that they did in the first half. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get an honest evaluation of how Josh Allen is. Yeah, they were playing prevent. They were laying back. They weren't blitzing as much. They weren't bringing as much weak side pressures. They weren't doing a lot of the stuff that they did in the first half to Peterman, which is why he seemed to look more successful in the second half.
Yeah.
But I mean, to Nick's point, you know, he said. They need to convert third downs. I mean, you need to convert third downs. You can't go.
That wasn't Nick.
That was the
outside looking in.
Outside looking in. Yeah. He said, hey, you got to convert third downs. I mean,
and the Bills didn't have a first down until the second half. You know, and really, when you take a look at it, they had 10 first downs in the second half. All right, that's good pace. Right, that's pretty good pace. 2 of them came from penalties, so you got a little bit of help. So you're only converted 8 first downs all game without any help. That's terrible. That's just terrible. You cannot go the first half of football without making a successful drive longer than 10 yards. You can't do it. You're never going to win football games because at that point it becomes a field position battle, right? And if the other offense isn't moving the ball, then you're just kicking it back and forth to each other. And the Bills, you know, when they've had good field position in the past, have been competitive, but they weren't even anywhere close in the field position battle today because they couldn't move the football. Again, you gave your punter the football 9 times. You completed 11 passes the whole game. So there's a lot of issues going around, and it does start with you have to look at the offensive line. But you also have to look at the preparation time that these quarterbacks were given, because until you can truthfully look at it and say, we gave them every opportunity in the world to be successful, I don't know if you can really make a decision as far as how they're doing. Like, you gave Peterman all the snaps at the ones, you throw Allen out there and just say, well, let's see what happens. And I really think that when you play Allen, that's what you're looking at. Now, if Allen takes all the snaps at the ones next week, again, he did have an easier time against that Baltimore defense because, to Mario's point, they were playing off coverage. They were playing 2-3 safeties deep, just to keep it in front of you football, and it's easy to complete underneath passes. Unfortunately, I think he only completed 6 passes, right? 6? 5?
6.
5. He completed 6 passes. Yep. And they were playing off those receivers for a bunch of that. So there's a lot of recovery this Bills team has to make going into next week. And to talk about next week, I don't even know where to start, because I didn't see anything this week that was truly a building block besides the fact that this defense did have some very few bright spots, and the pass rush was getting pressure, didn't bring anybody down. Edmonds looked solid from a communication standpoint. So again, there's some things that were positives here, but they're way more negatives than just the score.
And it was even some of the playmakers from last year. I mean, I think it was Poyer tried to come and make a tackle on Lamar Jackson. He got pie faced to the ground, and he was going for 25 yards on the sideline. It's like not even the guys that you could say, oh, we rely on these guys to make plays. They weren't even making plays. No. So it was like I said before, it's like the wake up moment. But,
right. Well, and when you carry 4 tight ends, John Patrick just mentioned this. Didn't use tight ends much. You're absolutely right. When you carry 4 tight ends, you expect them to, be there. And Kroon was there at the end of the game for Allen, but again, they weren't running real complicated coverage. They had their second. They pulled a lot of their starters out of the game. They were playing 10, 12 yards off the receivers at the line. So they were given a pretty big cushion. But when you carry 4 tight ends, you expect to see them show up sometime before you're down 40 points. It's unfortunate that a game that you think the Bills would be in, right? This is a team that has always predicated itself on being successful in the run. It's raining like hell, right? you're thinking this is a good day to run the football.
You had every excuse to run the ball.
You had every reason to run the football, and you couldn't get it done on the ground. You couldn't complete a pass, and I have to imagine that unless this coaching staff is a really tight-knit group of people, there could be an implosion at one Bills drive when they get in, and it'll be interesting to see how, as a staff, they move forward. McDermott in his post-game really didn't answer any questions. He was very polite. I'm not saying he didn't go Marshawn Lynch. Let's call it that. He didn't go Marshawn. But he was like, I have to watch the film. I have to watch the tape. And I don't blame him for taking that approach. I'm not going to throw a player under the bus without doing my due diligence first. And we are right now looking from a reaction standpoint. Maybe when we go back and watch the game again, we'll see some stuff, that was a personnel issue on the field, but it just looked like that offensive line was wreaking havoc on itself. And the defense, unfortunately, it looked like, from a secondary standpoint, they just didn't look good. And a secondary that really looked solid and tight-knit last year, with only one position change, dropping out E.J. Gaines. That was really the only position change. You had no Vontae Davis, who I think they were expecting to step up. You were playing Philip Gaines instead. Teron Johnson was on the field a lot.
He ended up going off. He got hurt periodically. So.
Yeah, we ran into a problem here, and if I'm Sean McDermott, I'm not really sure where I start.
But here's what I'll just make one point, because I know it's going to be talked about all week. I just want to make one point really quick, and like I said, thank you to you. Thank you to those of you who decided to join us today for the live feed. We really do appreciate it, and the feedback. The feedback's been amazing, so thanks to you guys for that. The thing about it is this: if you decide to go with Allen for the rest of the year, some of you guys saying, let him go, let him learn, let him take his lumps, let him do this. If he happens to have an implosion of any kind, and he performs horribly, you cannot go back to Peterman.
Yeah.
Because this is the second time now that this kid, I'm saying kid because I'm 70 years old, but with Peterman, is like you cannot go back to Peterman. That's why he's not giving it away right away. He's not saying, Peterman or Allen next week, blah, 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 and all sort of stuff. Because he needs to evaluate the film. He honestly does. Both of them didn't play lights out.
No.
But if you ever run into any kind of trouble with Allen down the line, you cannot go back to Peterman if you start Allen next week.
Right.
That's the only caveat I would take out of what he was saying and what goes on, because as being a former quarterback, being pulled, and then not going back in, it really destroys your confidence. And he would be a shell of himself if he ever had to come back in. Like, let's say week 5, week 6, Allen's not really getting it done. If Peterman came in, you're not going to get any results, because he's like, you're just going to pull me. I don't care. What's the worst that can happen? So that's the only thing that I'm. So
you're expecting Peterman to start next week.
I'm not expecting it, but that's the only reason he's having a little trepidation with it, because you got to remember, they drafted. It's not like a Peterman was a holdover from a previous regime where he could just bench him and not care.
Right.
They drafted him. They used a 5th-round pick on him. So therefore, it wasn't a lineman. It wasn't a backup running back. It wasn't an outside linebacker or anything like that. They used a 5th-round pick on a quarterback, this regime. So they have to account and they have to take accountability for that pick. So I don't think that they'll be so quick to pull the trigger on Peterman. I wouldn't be surprised if he got snaps with the ones on Tuesday. Unfortunately.
Hey, well, I mean, it's you don't have a lot of options right now if you're a Bills fan, and that's kind of where we sit. So we'll wrap up this post game. Thank you for everybody for hanging out with us, and we will see you after the next game. And again, thank you so much for. Thank you so much for your comments, and we'll catch you this week. Make sure to tune into the Sunday Drive, which is not on Sundays anymore, because today's Sunday. We're going to tape the rest of the segments for this week today, and they will come out over the course of next week. So keep it tuned. Thanks again for subscribing, and keep that notification turned on, and we'll talk to you soon. Later, guys.